So hey guys, Strawman Dusty here, and a couple of days ago I made a video about popular YouTuber Bearing. Bearing is an Australian YouTuber who put out a video explaining why he's going to vote no for same-sex marriage in Australia. And in my opinion, his entire argument is just a slippery slope fallacy. Basically, he's like, yeah, I think gay people should be allowed to get married. However, I'm going to vote no anyway, because there's no telling, maybe someday, the government of Australia is going to make dissent against gay marriage illegal. And since we don't know what the future's going to bring, I think we should deny gay people their civil rights for now. To me, slippery slope arguments are a ridiculous reason to deny people civil rights right now. However, in the video I made on him, I didn't really focus on the arguments he was making. Instead, I focused on the silly examples he gave to back up his slippery slope argument. He clearly went out on the internet and he found everything he possibly could to back up his point that it was possible they were going to make dissent against gay marriage illegal. But the examples he used were incredibly fucking stupid. Most of them had nothing to do with this gay marriage bill. Most of them were just red herrings or just silliness. So I spent my video focusing on making fun of him for those examples. And in hindsight, I wish I would have spent more time explaining why I disagree with his arguments and believe they're silly, slippery slope arguments. But in my zest to make an entertaining video, I instead decided to focus on his silly examples. And I didn't really do justice to his argument. And I got accused of strawmanning him, and I can't stand when people strawman me. So I wanted to make another video, a more fair video to Bearing, where I actually let him talk, where I actually let him say for himself what his views are, why he believes those views, and then explain why I believe his position is not a valid reason to deny people their civil rights. So right off the bat, I'm going to play this clip of him so you can hear in his own words exactly what his position is, exactly why he believes that Australia is not yet ready to give gay people their civil rights.
So as I outlined before that little tangent, one of the main reasons I cannot vote yes is the legislative uncertainty surrounding freedom of expression that a yes result would give us. Instead of putting the cart before the horse, let's address these potential landmines before they can do any real damage to people's livelihoods. So what I'm saying there, Dusty, is that I have concerns with voting for a change to one of our laws that could potentially affect people's freedom of expression, without knowing how the government intends to prevent that from happening. So why don't we address those concerns first and remove that uncertainty? You see, in Australia, we unfortunately don't have a constitutional right to freedom of expression like America has with the First Amendment. If we did, I could vote yes with confidence, knowing that freedom of expression was not going to be affected.
So the crux of his argument is this: Australia does not have a First Amendment. They do not have a guaranteed right to free speech. Therefore, it's possible in the future the government is going to crack down on people speaking out against gay marriage, and until we're 100% absolutely certain this is not going to happen, we simply can't allow gay people to get married. The problem I have with this argument is that I believe Bearing is grasping at straws here. I believe he is incredibly overselling the danger here that the government is going to crack down on dissent of gay marriage. First of all, no politician has even hinted they ever intend to do this. In fact, doing this seems like it will be political suicide on such a hot-button topic where so much of the population is against gay marriage. To propose a law to make dissent against gay marriage illegal was basically cutting your own throat, which is why no politician has even slightly hinted this will ever happen. There have been tons of people speaking out against gay marriage since the very beginning. None of them arrested, none of them fined, none of them had their free speech limited in any way as far as I could find about this. Not from the government anyway. Secondly, I've actually read the law. There's a draft of the law they're proposing to pass that's been out even before Bearing put out his first video. And if you read the bill, there is absolutely nothing in there about cracking down on anybody's free speech whatsoever. In fact, just the opposite. The bill actually exempts all church and clergy members from having to perform any kind of gay marriages whatsoever. It exempts them from having to let gays use their facilities. It even seems to purposely have a loophole built into it that allows anybody to opt out this that wants to. For example, those of you worried that Christians might be forced to bake cakes for gay weddings, apparently there's a loophole built into this bill that would prevent that from happening. Pretty much anybody can opt out of this that wants to. If this bill were passed tomorrow and gay people were allowed to have civil rights like everybody else, absolutely nothing would change with free speech whatsoever. So is it a valid argument to deny people their civil rights right now out of a fear that someday somebody might crack down on your speech to speak out against it? Even though there's absolutely no evidence this is going to happen, even though absolutely nobody with any power is saying they're going to do this, and even though they've never punished anybody from doing this before. I say no. This is a clear slippery slope argument. There's a reason slippery slope is a fallacy. I think this is a bullshit argument. Thirdly, and this was actually pointed out to me by another Australian person, it appears that there's already a constitutional protection that protects Australians from dissenting against gay marriage. Now, yes, it's true, Australia does not have a First Amendment that protects all free speech like the United States does. However, the High Court of Australia has ruled that the Constitution of Australia has implied protected political speech, which is basically free speech for political opinions. According to the High Court, the Australian government cannot legislate to restrict your freedom of political speech. Now, what qualifies as political speech? Apparently, it's restricted to matters that may influence voters' decisions at the polls, which obviously gay marriage seems to 100% qualify for this. This is one of the most hot-button issues right now in Australia that absolutely influences voters' decisions at the polls. It seems pretty cut and dry that dissent of gay marriage is already covered under the Constitution of Australia by the High Court. Now, why Bearing didn't mention this, I have no idea, whether he does not know this or whether he just didn't mention it because it didn't fit his narrative or he disagrees with this. I have no idea. But the High Court of Australia ruling that there's an implied constitutional protection against this kind of speech is a pretty big thing to skip over when your entire argument is that there's too much uncertainty about whether or not dissent of gay marriage will be decriminalized in the future to give gay people their civil rights. After reading the bill myself and seeing there is no limitation of free speech in it whatsoever, after researching it and seeing no serious politician is even hinting at the fact they might try to legislate this, and after reading what the High Court says about the protections the Constitution gives you, Bearing's argument that giving gay people civil rights is too much of a risk to free speech just seems to fall apart. As I said, if this law were passed tomorrow, there is nothing in the law that would change freedom of expression whatsoever. Absolutely nothing would change. Now, is it possible? Is it possible in a month, 2 months, 3 months, some crazy-ass politician might decide they want to legislate gay marriage dissent and criminalize it? It's possible. Based on the evidence, very unlikely, but possible. So is the remote possibility this might happen in the future a valid argument to deny people their civil rights right now? Obviously, you guys know my opinion. I say, of course not. This is a bullshit argument, which is why I spent most of my first video simply making fun of him for all these stupid examples he gave to try to back this argument up. He clearly went out on the internet and tried to find all the worst examples he could possibly find to scare people into believing there is a very good chance they might criminalize dissent. But since there aren't really any good examples to back this up, the stuff he picked was ridiculous. Like he posted a clip where this one girl got fired by her stupid ass boss because she posted something anti-gay on Facebook. Obviously, this has nothing to do with the government. This has nothing to do with the bill itself. Passing this bill tomorrow wouldn't change this whatsoever. It's just a red herring. It has nothing to do with it. Bearing is simply trying to paint Australia as this dystopian nightmare where any second now, anything he says could be cracked down upon. But if you actually look into it, it's not really like that there at all. I researched it, and not a single person, as far as I could find, has ever been put in jail for their free speech. Even when it comes to hate speech, the most vile speech there is, over the last 20 years, only 2 people per year have been found in violation of it. And the most common penalty is an apology. Don't get me wrong, I think these hate speech laws are ridiculous. If I was a taxpayer knowing that they were only finding 2 people every year in violation, I'd be very wary about where they're spending the tax dollars at when it comes to this. But the idea that Australia has some giant problem cracking down on free speech is just not bared out by the evidence. The worst example I could find is where a self-described neo-Nazi went to a mosque and beheaded a mannequin dummy, and even he was only given a $2,000 fine. And I've spoken to several Australians over the last couple of days who have told me they feel perfectly free to say whatever they want to in Australia. They don't in any way feel like the government is going to crack down on their speech. In my opinion, this entire thing is being incredibly blown out of proportion by Bearing in order to fit his narrative on why gay people should not be allowed civil rights. Which is why I had such a problem with this video to begin with, and why I made my video so mocking. What if I told you that you could both give gay people their civil rights, but also fight any free speech issues that might arise from this in the future? Like I said, if you've read this bill, if they were to pass it tomorrow, it would have absolutely no effect on your freedom of speech. If in a week from now, or a month from now, or 2 months from now, some crazy asshole politician decides to commit career suicide and criminalize dissent against gay marriage, I'll be right there with you to fight it. I'll be standing right at your side to beat down this motherfucker. But denying gay people their civil rights now, on the off chance that'll happen in the future, is a bullshit argument. Give gay people their civil rights now, and then in the unlikely event in the future this stuff crops up, you fight it then. You can both be a warrior for gay people's civil rights and also be a warrior for free speech. You don't have to choose one. So anyway, I'm not gonna go through his whole video. It was basically just him mostly claiming I strawmanned him by making fun of these stupid examples he gives, instead of attacking what I felt was a very silly, slippery slope fallacy argument. His entire point throughout the video is that there is much more legislative uncertainty about if gay marriage dissent is going to be criminalized than there actually is. When you consider no politician has actually even hinted this is going to happen, you read the bill yourself, you see it has absolutely nothing to do with punishing dissent. You see that no one has been punished for this yet by the government, and then you read what the High Court of Australia has to say about the implied constitutional protection of political speech, of which gay marriage seems like it fits perfectly. And then you notice the best examples that Bearnings could give to try to back up his claim are completely bullshit. In my opinion, his entire argument just falls apart. But I admit I should have said all this in the first video. I should have attacked his arguments harder instead of just attacking the stupid examples he gave. So anyway, I just wanted to make this video really quick to actually address Bearnings' points. I'm sorry I did such a poor job in the first video. I could have done the first video much better in my opinion. I will learn from this experience and use it to make me better in the future. But ultimately, none of this really matters anymore. The vote is over now. Now we have to wait and see how Australians voted. I hope they did not listen to Bearnings' arguments. I think his arguments are ridiculous. But I will put links to both of Bearnings' videos in the description of this video, and you guys can check it out for yourself and you can see if you think he has valid points or not. Anyway, I hope that clears up my position a bit. My intention definitely was not to strawman Bearnings in any way, and if I did, I apologize. Sometimes in my exuberance to make an entertaining video, I go a bit overboard, but I will learn from this and I will make a better effort in the future to be more thoughtful and make my positions much more clear. Thanks for listening, guys. I love you, and as always, logic.